Hey everyone, Andrew Pico with Loop Community here, and today I'm going to show you how you can use the MIDI out features in Prime to change patches on your SPD sample pad through a set or even during a song. The setup I'm using today is Prime for Mac running to my track rig, and I then use my track rig's USB hub to send MIDI data to my SPD sample pad. The SPD has 5-pin MIDI connectors, so I'm using a USB to MIDI cable between track rig and the pad. You can find this cable just by Googling it. Several options will come up. They're not that expensive and easy to find. What's great about using track rig in this situation is that track rig has 4 USB ports on the back of it, which means I could send MIDI signals to up to 4 different devices at once if I want to. This could be really convenient if I also wanted to change, say, my keyboard player's patches in main stage, which we also have a video for how to do that on our YouTube channel. And it also just leaves me with the option of having a couple extra ports to hook up my Looptimus foot controller or any other USB device I wanna play with. Alright, so on my computer I have my Prime session opened up, just a couple songs here from Hillsong Young Free, Alive and Wake. I chose these because I like to play the lead line for these songs on my sample pad rather than leaving them in the track. And so I muted them in the multi-track, and I have the patches ready to go here on my SPD. Alive is a great example of this too, because Alive has the same lead line playing in the verses and in the chorus, but it's a different sound. So in the verses it's much more subtle, it's kind of like a Rhodes sound, where in the choruses it's a little more epic. You can kind of hear it here. Here's the Rhodes sound in the verse, and then in the chorus it gets much louder and bigger. So instead of me having to press this up and down arrow while I'm playing in the middle of the song, I want to have Prime do that for me. So let's jump on in. I'm going to begin by making sure my SPD is ready and able to receive MIDI messages from my computer. So to do this, I'm going to click on Menu, then go to Setup, and then arrow down to MIDI. Hit Enter and it brings up our MIDI settings here. It's important to note which channels your SPD is going to be looking for MIDI data to come down, as we're going to need to match this in Prime. This is also helpful if you're going to be programming multiple devices. I want to make sure only program changes coming down channel 10 are going to trigger my SPD kit changes. The only other parameters we need to worry about on this page is making sure local control is still set to on, and this USB MIDI IF is set to off, which it is. So that's all set. I can back out of there, go back to my kits. I'm now going to go over to my MacBook and make sure it's set up to send MIDI data from track rig's USB hub. I'm going to open up my audio MIDI setup just by clicking on the little search icon, spotlight, start typing audio, it comes up right away. You might see the audio devices window here. I'm going to exit this out and click window up here, and I want to show the MIDI studio. This is what we're interested in. Now get intimidated. I have a bunch of extra stuff in here because these are all devices I've used over the years. You probably have a much simpler window. The only thing that we care about in this setup is seeing this USB MIDI interface. This is what my Mac is calling track rig at the moment. This is my Mac's way of telling me track rig is connected and that it's a viable device to send MIDI over USB through. I can double click on it even if I want, and I could rename this track rig just so it doesn't look as intimidating. I should also note that there is something called the IC driver up here, and if you're just using the USB output from your computer and no interface like track rig, you will want to make sure you enable the IC driver by double clicking on it and making sure the device is online button is checked here. Okay, and we don't need to worry about anything else in here. We can go ahead and exit out of that. Now I'm going to look at my prime session here. I'm going to need to make sure prime is ready to send MIDI cues by clicking on the settings gear icon up here in the right corner. And I'll see MIDI cues connection drop down list here. I already have selected track rig USB MIDI device from the drop down list. You also see that IIC driver bus 1 is here if you're just using your computer's USB output. I'm going to select that, and we're all set there. Next, I'm going to click on this edit button right here underneath the gear icon, and I'm going to create some MIDI cues and start triggering some kit changes on my SPD. So when I click on that, I can now double click anywhere on the waveform of the song, in this case Alive, and add a MIDI program change that's going to be sent to my SPD. Now for Alive, I want to make sure that Alive starts on the Quieter Roads patch right when the song hits, right when the intro count off goes. So I want to set a MIDI cue at the very start of the song. Now you'll notice that the count off is a super tiny sliver here, so I can hit this magnifying glass and it will magnify wherever my playhead, this little red line is. So the playhead I can drag anywhere. I'm going to put at the beginning of the song, magnified, jumping closer, and we have the start of the song right here where the count off begins. I'm going to double click here and I can create a MIDI cue. Now I want to make sure that my MIDI cue is a program change. And now this is very important. I got to choose a note that it's going to send out. Now this note on the SPD is going to correspond to the kit number. But one thing that you need to notice is that the first note normaled in prime is actually not 1 but is 0. But on my SPD there is no 0 patch. So on my SPD, note 0 corresponds to kit 1, and then it goes from there in ascending order. So basically, I just need to do the simple math of subtracting 1 from my kit number, and that's the MIDI note I'm going to choose. So if I look at my SPD, my Alive kit 1, my Alive patch is kit 30. So if I subtract 1, that's 29. So I'm going to choose note 29. Channel, now remember in my SPD I had it set to channel 10, so anything I want to trigger my SPD needs to be sent down channel 10. And velocity we can leave at 1. I'm going to save, and it creates a little MIDI cue there. Now I want this MIDI cue to be at the very start of the song, so I can just click, hold, and drag it to the back. I can drag it anywhere in that start section. It'll lock in, it won't let me go any farther. I need to create a MIDI cue in the intro if I want to put it at the start of the intro. I'm just going to throw it at the start of the song. I'm going to back up. And I also want to make sure that before the chorus, I'm going to add another MIDI cue. Now, I'm not going to put the MIDI cue at the start of the chorus because, especially in Alive, I need to be playing on the downbeat with that new patch. And with the SPD, especially if you're using custom sounds, it takes about half a second for them to load. And if I put the patch change or the MIDI cue right on the downbeat, it's going to take half a second for that to load, and I'm going to miss that downbeat. So I'm going to put it in the last bar of the pre-chorus, because I know in that last bar I'm going to be doing a build on the toms and a fill, which is going to give my SPD more than enough time to switch patches before the downbeat of the chorus. So I'm going to drag my playhead to the end-ish of the pre-chorus, zoom in, and I have that little area right here where I'm going to double click, create another program change. In this case, Alive 2 is actually kit number 31, so -1 equals 30. I'm going to choose note 30, channel 10, velocity 1 is fine, and it creates it right there. I might have to play with this in practice to see exactly where I want it, but I have a good feeling that's going to be plenty of time right there. Zoom out, and before verse 2, I want to go back to the Rhodes sound. Actually, in this case, because I've played this song enough, I know that I want the MIDI note, the MIDI cue, to happen right on the downbeat of verse 2. I will miss that first hit, but I'm okay with that because it's more important for me to finish out this interlude section with the large sound, and when things die down, I'm going to hit a crash anyway on that downbeat. So there'll be plenty of time for my SPD to switch patches. Double click, create a program change. I'm going to go back to 29, channel 10, and I'm going to butt this one up right against the start of first 2. Zoom out, and I'll leave it at that, but I would go through and do another change for the chorus, as well as maybe another one on the outro. Once I am finished, I'm going to hit the done button here, and I'm going to check my work by making sure that when I start a live with my playhead at the very beginning, stop the song, when I start a live, I want to make sure that my SPD is jumping to that Alive 1 kit. So I'm just going to go to a random patch. Yeah, here's my Taylor Swift blank space patch. And I'm going to hit play on this song and make sure that my SPD jumps to the right patch.
Intro 3, 4.
And there it goes. It's great. Cool. And double check the chorus. I'm going to fast forward to the pre-chorus, play the last little bit, and right before the chorus, when it hits this MIDI program change for note 30, it should switch to patch 31 on my SPD.
Chorus 3, 4.
And there it goes. Which is super handy. So now that I don't have to think about somehow stopping playing and hitting this up or down arrow in the middle of the song. So it's as simple as that. I can do as much or as little of that as I want. Now what's going to be more common is what I'll do for Wake, which is just one patch the entire time. So I'm going to do what I did at the beginning of Alive. I'm going to load Wake. My playhead's already at the beginning. I'm going to hit edit MIDI cues. I'm going to zoom in to the start. Wake, I believe, I'm going to zoom, is kit 35 minus 1 equals 34. So I'm going to create a program change for 34, note 34, channel 10, save, drag that right to the start. And that's probably what most of your songs will look like, just one change at the beginning. But it's really handy that it's one less thing that you have to remember to switch in between songs. So when Alive finishes out, say I'm on Alive patch 2, I can go to the end here and play
3, 4.
And I have the crossfade transition here,
Intro,
and we see
3,
that it's
4.
switched to Wake already on my SPD, and I'm ready to go. Pretty nifty stuff. So you can do that for as many songs as you like. You can create them for different instruments. If I had a keyboard set up and I wanted to change main stage patches, I could create MIDI cues that go out a different channel, and that channel is the same one that the main stage is set up to receive. So that way, those MIDI cues do not interfere with the MIDI cues that I've set for channel 10 that only change my SPD. And there you have it, a hands-free automated way of making sure your SPD sample pad changes kits on time, every time, using MIDI cues from Prime. Wish you all the best, and thank you so much for being a part of the Loop community.